And with that, we once again convene the Knights of the Round Table here for our sports questions. Mark Schlereth, Steve Phillips, Jalen Rose, Barry Melrose. We're talking basketball. Jalen, we'll start with you. Should officiating be different in crunch time come playoff time?
Absolutely not. We must protect the integrity of each sport, and ultimately the calls at the beginning of the game should be consistent with the calls that happen at the end of the game. So if you need to play with discipline and focus and take care of the ball and all of that stuff at the beginning of the game, it should apply at the end, not change. It's too confusing to the players, to the fans, and ultimately to the coaches, who all pull their hair out on every call anyway.
I echo everything Jalen said, and I'll add one more thing. What happens when you put the whistle away, and this happened in the NHL for years, it lets average players and poor players become a bigger factor because you have no rules. All of a sudden, guys that are getting foot races can just haul a guy down. You can trip a guy. You can knock a guy on his butt when he hasn't got the puck. Crunch time in playoffs is about making plays and having success, and you want the great players to have the puck in those situations. If you lower the level of the play because of penalties, it lowers the quality of the game and the quality of the entertainment.
See, I think part of the problem that we see is not only the timing of the plays, but also the star players. It seems like maybe the strike zone in baseball is different for a superstar player, an Albert Pujols, than it might be for like a Desi Relaford or somebody like that. That it's not only the time of the game and being critical, it's a playoff situation, but if it's a superstar, maybe he gets the benefit of the doubt where the other guy might get rung up on a strike.
Absolutely. You know, I'm one of those guys. The officials have such a tough job anyhow, and we always want to look at them. I hate the way we do this as a sports league. We're looking at them, we're doing instant replay, we're putting them, we're scrutinizing them, and what does it do? To them, it makes them basically hold back a little bit. You know, it makes them go, well, I'll rely on instant replay, or I'll rely on this, or I should change the way I officiate. That's garbage. You should never change the way you officiate. Start to finish, it should always be the same.
What about letting them play, though? Look, we're talking about a subtle difference here, right? And I think we're talking, look, basketball and hockey, we're talking mainly here. Isn't there a subtle difference with, hey, loosen it up a little bit so guys get up and down the floor without constant whistles?
You don't want to stop the flow of the game, true enough. That takes away from the excitement and the fans, but ultimately you don't want the game to be out of control. Just like playing basketball in the backyard where there are no officials. You know the guys that are going to call it straight, and you know the guys that are going to call it every time you breathe on them. That's why you want to take the element of surprise in a gray area away.
Exactly. When is the time to let them play? When do you make that judgment? Does the referee say, well, 5 minutes left in the game, we let them play?
All bets
10
are
minutes
off.
left in the game.
Right.
Do it from the start. The thing's called in the first period, it's called in the third period. That's the only way that's fair. The players know, the coaches know. And just like Mark said, you take a lot of the pressure off referees by doing that.
All right, see, holding is where it's at, isn't it? This is what we're talking about. That's where it's a subjective call every time around. It's like offensive player control. Isn't that where it's at in football?
Well, certainly, and I go back to my own experience in championship games, Super Bowl 32. A member of the Denver Broncos, one of the final drives in the final 3 minutes of the game, we're driving, it's 24-24, Denver Broncos, Green Bay Packers on that drive. The Packers get a personal foul for clipping, and the Broncos turn around, a holding call on Shannon Sharpe in that final pivotal drive. The refs were calling that game the same way it had been called for the entire game. That's Super Bowl. That's the final drive.
So you felt good about that? You said, all right, that's the way it should.
That's the way it should be. That's the way they called it in the beginning of the game. It's the way it should be called in the end of the game.
See, I think that the physical thing should be consistent throughout. The one thing I'll say, though, is in the playoffs, I think that the umpires should give verbal length to coaches and players, that if they're going to argue, give them a little more rope. Don't kick them out of the game. You don't want to eject somebody just because they're arguing and get mad and kicking their dirt at you a little bit. You got to give them a little more rope, be able to stay in the game, because you don't want a championship determined because somebody got kicked out of a game.
All right, well, that was easy. It's unanimous, right?
Yeah.
All right, so it shall be written. It's down. The Knights of the Round Table, Sports Table, have made their decision. Thank you, gentlemen.
If us four guys agree, it's got to be right.
We're done here. Thank you.